Imagine the whistle-sharp burn of alpine air slicing across your face as you rocket down an Olympic slalom course, edges biting, hamstrings screaming, the entire planet compressed into the narrow tunnel of snow that unspools beneath your board. For 20-year-old Canadian prodigy, Ryan James wedding that tunnel once shone brighter than any future, bright enough to blot out the shadows he would later cast bright enough to blot out the shadows he would later cast across 3 countries. On that frigid day in February 2002, the cameras loved him, blonde spikes poking from his helmet, frost crystals clinging to a grin too cocky for caution. He burst from the Salt Lake City start gate like a cannon shell, drove his heel side turn so hard that blue dye fanned into the air, then skidded out on a single mistimed toe edge that flung him off the racing line and off the podium in one cruel heartbeat. 24th place never even gets printed on commemorative programs, but the universe remembers, because that wobble, that microscopic misalignment of steel and ice, set off a chain reaction that would flood North America with cocaine bricks, spray barn walls with bullets, and land the once fearless kid on the FBI's 10 most wanted list with a $10 million price tag on his head. Back in Thunder Bay, the applause died faster than frost on a stovetop coil. Government stipends vanished, sponsors ghosted, and Ryan found himself hawking autographed goggles on eBay to cover rent on a damp basement apartment in Vancouver. He enrolled in kinesiology at the University of British Columbia because student loans were the only cash he could still qualify for, but lectures felt flat after the white noise rush of World Cup start gates. Nights he worked the door at neon-soaked Granville Street clubs where bouncers traded more pot than they confiscated. Vancouver in the mid-2000s was the emerald city of BC Bud, a designer cannabis so dense with trichomes it left California tourists speechless, literally, lungs frozen mid-cough. Ryan had charm, a clean passport, and the one trait smugglers prize above all, an appetite for risk so voracious it chews logic into confetti. His first run was almost comical. He stuffed 40 pounds of vacuum-sealed weed beneath the false floor of an old Subaru, slapped a Canada Snow Team decal on the rear hatch, and breezed through the Peace Arch crossing while chatting cheerfully about avalanche conditions with a border guard who never once bent to inspect the skis lashed to the roof rack. The return trip felt weightless. No plant matter, just envelopes of crisp US dollars that crackled like a campfire every time he shifted gears. In that moment, the slope of his life tilted forever downward, and gravity did the rest. By 2005, he oversaw 3 hydroponic bunkers hidden behind drywall in Burnaby suburbia, each crop yielding 120 pounds every 9 weeks. Profits financed heli-ski weekends in Revelstoke, a pearl-white BMW M3 and a zip line of connections stretching from dorm room dealers to Mexican middlemen, haunting Los Angeles nightclubs. A police raid in 2006 should have ended the spree. Rows of glistening plants, industrial lights, ledgers packed with US phone numbers, but a procedural error torpedoed the case. The Crown dropped charges. Ryan read the dismissal as divine approval. The real pivot came 2 years later, at an after-hours warehouse party in downtown LA. Amid thudding bass and fog machine haze, he met a sinewy Sinaloan nicknamed El Flaco, who pulled him aside, tapped a forefinger against his temple and murmured, "Weed is footballs, hermano, coke is snowflakes. Which travels easier?" Pure arithmetic did the seduction. 1 kilogram of cocaine fetched 10 times the profit of the same mass in cannabis, and fit inside a snowboard bag. The following week, Ryan borrowed a friend's van, decal-wrapped it with BC Snow Adventures, and drove 110 kilograms of white powder through the San Isidro port in broad daylight, while joking with border agents about waxing temperatures. Hubris, however, always sends an invoice. At dawn on a July morning in 2010, unmarked SUVs boxed in his van near Oceanside, California. DEA agents slid open the surfboard bags, revealing bricks stamped with dancing skulls. In a bare federal courtroom, the former Olympian weighed a lifetime sentence against a plea. He chose 7 years in Victorville Federal Correctional Complex, unaware he had just stepped into the Harvard Business School of Organized Crime. Victorville was a crucible. Cartel lieutenants bench-pressed next to Aryan gang enforcers. Cigarette packs became currency, assault stories became bedtime fables. Ryan, fluent in Spanish from years on the contest circuit, started trading custom workout programs for smuggling tutorials, how to spot heat sensors on freight containers, how to bleach fingerprints off plastic wrap, how to build shell corporations in Caribbean havens before breakfast. Inmates nicknamed him El Olympico, half mocking, half respectful. He soaked it all in the way most guys watch Netflix. Mid-sentence he married Layla Mer, an Iranian-Canadian businesswoman who visited so often the guards suspected she was scouting the yard for escape routes. Layla ran a textile import company moving Persian rugs through the port of Vancouver. Perfect camouflage, investigators later alleged, for funneling cartel money in reverse, cash buried between silk layers like Easter eggs. She insisted her husband was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, yet financial forensics would eventually map millions of crypto dollars bouncing between her accounts and exchanges in Malta, the Cayman Islands, even North Macedonia. Parole came in early 2016. Ryan walked out of Victorville lean, tattooed, and armed with two invaluable assets: a squeaky clean Canadian passport and the private phone numbers of Sinaloa shot callers impressed by his snow globe charm. He flew to Culiacán on a ticket paid in burner phone Bitcoin, checked into a nondescript concrete safe house, and spent 6 months proving loyalty. Locals still talk about the blonde gringo who drained tequila with sicarios, then outsprinted them up mountain switchbacks at dawn. His reward was a simple contract: oversee the northbound flow of Sinaloa product in exchange for 20% profit and permission to innovate. Innovate he did. He leased a warehouse in the fashion district of Los Angeles under the LLC name Vegan Frontier Foods. Inside, pallets of organic quinoa masked cores of compressed cocaine. He purchased a fleet of refrigerated trucks, programmed their routes into a spreadsheet that calculated risk scores by day of week, and paid drivers a flat $15,000 per successful run. Between 2017 and 2023, at least 4 tons of cocaine and fentanyl analogs crossed the border under his stewardship. Enough powder to dust every coffee table in Canada for a month. Street value, roughly $400 million. But big margins invite big betrayals. On September 9, 2023, thieves siphoned 2 tons of wedding-branded coke from a Stockton warehouse, spiriting it away in 3 pickup trucks, and leaving nothing but tire grooves and a single shell casing stamped 9mm Luger. 5 days later in rural Port Hope, Ontario, 2 petty smugglers were discovered face down in a hay barn, execution style, each shot twice behind the ear. A third victim crawled half-blind into the farmhouse kitchen and survived long enough to mutter, "Ryan," Clark to paramedics. Andrew Dictator Clark, Ryan's childhood snowpark rival turned enforcer, had flown to Toronto, rented a pickup, and vanished. Ontario's sense of pastoral safety evaporated overnight. Suddenly, agencies that once worked parallel cases began swapping data faster than toddlers trade germs. The DEA, FBI, RCMP, and Mexico's Fiscalia General stitched together an unprecedented task force, Operation Slalom Giant, a sarcastic salute to Ryan's erstwhile Olympic event. They deployed LiDAR drones to map cartel ranches, installed radio towers that triangulated burner phone pings within 3 seconds, and used blockchain forensics to follow crypto mixers Ryan had bragged were untouchable. By mid-2024, they had seized more than a ton of narcotics, 3 firearms, $250,000 in vacuum-sealed bundles, and roughly $3 million in Bitcoin. 12 lieutenants were frog-marched into custody. Clark was nabbed in Baja California without a single shot fired after undercover Marines posing as surfers handed him a malfunctioning rifle. Ryan, though, evaporated. Intelligence pegged him at an airstrip outside Los Mochis mere hours before federal units arrived. One informant swears he climbed into a single-engine Cessna, waved a sarcastic snowboard salute, and vanished over the Gulf of California. Another claims he chartered a fishing boat and slipped south to Guatemala under a tropical storm no drone dared challenge. Wherever he fled, He carried multiple passports, titanium-cased hard drives, and enough crypto seed phrases to buy a private island. The Bureau retaliated with publicity. On the 6th of March, 2025, Assistant Director Ackle Davis stepped before a wall of cameras in Westwood, California, flanked by stacks of seized coke bricks and a monitor displaying Ryan's Olympic headshot side by side with a recent surveillance still gaunter cheeks, a half-healed scar along the jaw, eyes that had traded boyish sparkle for predator calm. Davis announced Weddings Edition to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list, the first Canadian to make the roster in nearly a decade, and unveiled a $10 million reward for any lead that put him in handcuffs. Reporters asked where he might be hiding. Davis replied, he could be carving powder in Chile or slipping through Mexico's Sierra Madre. Either way, winter eventually ends. Yet behind the bullet points and buzzwords lies flesh and blood fallout. Los Angeles County tallied 370 cocaine-fentanyl overdose deaths between 2021 and 2024, many linked to product traced back to Weddings Network. Maria Hernandez lights a candle every night beside her son's high school diploma, whispering prayers in a house that still smells faintly of bleach from the night EMTs scrubbed blood from linoleum. In Port Hope, the Miles family holds Friday vigils in a barn whose bullet holes gape like open mouths. They believe Olympic glory doesn't mean innocence anymore. Criminologists dissect the saga on podcasts, noting that adrenaline-addicted snowboarders and cartel lieutenants share a neurological quirk dopamine burst that eclipse fear when stakes spike high enough. Dr. Lena Ford of the University of Colorado writes, "Risk is a drug. Athletes withdraw from competition and crave a replacement high. Crime offers the dosage." Meanwhile, policymakers debate athlete aftercare, cryptocurrency oversight, and whether social media platforms unwittingly glamorize fugitives by turning manhunts into clickbait sagas. For now, Ryan James' wedding remains a ghost slicing untouched powder somewhere, or sweating in jungle humidity beneath newly inked aliases. If captured, he faces 8 U.S. indictments: continuing criminal enterprise, international drug conspiracy, money laundering, multiple counts of violent crime in aid of racketeering, and interstate murder for hire. Each charge alone can bury a man for life. Together, they form a coffin of statutes. Canada's homicide warrants await behind that, and Mexico's racketeering charges lurk beyond, eager for their pound of flesh. Yet every posse rides with an asterisk. Ryan still moves faster than most men can blink. He once carved Olympic ice at 70 miles per hour. Now he carves escape routes through mountain passes where cell service maps show only digital dark. Somewhere a mother may glance out her kitchen window and spot a blonde stranger refueling at a remote pump. Somewhere a ski patrol medic may treat a reckless rider whose accent slips between English and Spanish. One phone call could end the chase, one missed clue could stretch it another decade. Remember the kid in the start gate, board humming like a live wire, future whirring just out of reach? Then picture the mugshot on every news crawl, the bounty posters, the grieving parents clutching photographs gone greasy at the corners. Between those two images lies a single, catastrophic truth: gravity always wins. Mountains remind us daily. What shoots up must come screaming down, sometimes in an avalanche of broken bodies and powdered ruin. And when Ryan James' wedding finally falls, the impact will rattle every slope he ever dreamed of conquering.